Just sleep on the floor with the dog and pay for your stay. When my younger sister Nicole said that, I couldn't believe my ears. After a 7-hour drive that left me completely exhausted, Nicole stood in front of me like a hotel receptionist, arms crossed, her gaze cold and dismissive. At her words, my parents burst into laughter. That laughter was nothing but an insult directed at me. 2 months earlier, when I received a message inviting me to a family reunion, I hesitated. It was the first time in years that my family, who had never bothered to contact me, had suddenly reached out, and I couldn't hide my surprise. Was I really going back to that house? Memories of the past surged back like a tidal wave, shaking me to my core. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a faint light of hope flickered. The fragile thought that maybe, after all this time they wanted to repair our relationship, began to melt the ice around my heart. Maybe we could fill the years of silence and restore some sense of family bond. That faint hope began to take root. Though I hesitated, I decided this might be my one chance to reclaim lost time with them. On the day of the reunion, I drove back toward the house. Through the car window, familiar scenery rolled past. Wide fields under a blue sky, clusters of small-town streets. Once, this place had been my home. Now, it was just another stop on the road. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel until, finally, I pulled into the familiar suburban neighborhood. The cream-colored 2-story house came into view, the very house I had been forced out of more than a decade ago. I parked, drew in a deep breath, and rang the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately, and there they were. Exactly as I had pictured. My father and mother, both with more gray hair than before, and my sister Nicole, still dressed in her flashy clothes. None of them looked happy to see me. Instead, their expressions were flat, bored if not outright annoyed. "Well, Hillary, you came after all," my mother said with a thin smile, offering nothing more than a formal greeting. My father only nodded, making no move to take my suitcase. There was no joy of reunion on their faces. At the doorway, my mother sighed before getting to the point. "The reason we asked you here is because we need your signature for your grandmother's inheritance. The lawyer also said there are a few things you need to confirm." At that moment, the small flicker of hope I had carried was silently snuffed out. This wasn't about reconnecting as a family. I was only summoned out of necessity to deal with the estate. I understood that. Nicole's eyes dropped to my suitcase, and she sneered. "Did you really bring luggage, planning to stay the night?" I answered evenly. "Yes. After a 7-hour drive, I don't feel safe going back on the road at night. I just need a place to sleep for one night. I'll leave first thing in the morning." That's when Nicole smirked and said, "Just sleep on the floor with the dog and pay for your stay." Her words caught me off guard, and I searched for a reply. "What's wrong, Hillary? Is there a problem?" she pressed, her grin widening as she sensed my silence. "Of course, rent comes with the family discount, a special rate, $60 a night. Max hates being alone, so he'll be glad to have company like you." I could feel the blood in my body heat with anger. Nicole had lived in that house rent-free ever since graduating college, leeching off our parents for everything: housing, utilities, food. And now she had the audacity to demand $60 from me, calling it a family discount. Sheltered under our parents' roof her whole life, never knowing hardship, she strutted around as if she owned the place. "Hold on, Nicole. You live here for free, and you're telling me to pay $60 a night?" My voice shook with fury. Nicole widened her eyes in mock surprise, covering her mouth dramatically. "Oh, Hillary, what are you talking about? I help manage this house. I didn't just show up and freeload like you." My father snorted. "She's right, Hillary. Nicole takes care of things around here. Can you do the same?" My mother nodded in agreement. "Exactly. And $60 is perfectly reasonable. A regular hotel would charge you much more." Their words dismissed my protest completely, making it clear they had no intention of treating me with even a shred of respect. The struggles I had endured, the exhaustion from hours of driving, none of it meant anything to them. In their eyes, there was no thought of correcting Nicole's cruel words and behavior toward me. If anything, they seemed to take pleasure in it. Managing the house? Helping out? Since high school, I was the one who did most of the chores. You couldn't even clean your own room properly. My voice rose, but they refused to listen. "Hillary, that's enough. Nicole helps around the house," my mother scolded, frowning. The reality, That I alone had always been pushed to the margins, shut out from the warmth of family bonds, stabbed deep into my chest. Years of unfair treatment came flooding back in vivid detail, and the flames of anger inside me burned hotter than I could contain. I cursed myself for ever believing this trip might be a chance to rebuild our connection. How naive, how foolish that thought was. This moment drove it home. They hadn't changed at all. My pain, my efforts, none of it mattered to them. The people standing before me were strangers who thought nothing of hurting me. The family I had longed for simply did not exist. The memory of that Christmas when I was 17 came rushing back. The living room had been lit with a dazzling Christmas tree. Family and relatives filled the space with laughter and chatter. On the table lay a small gold necklace, an heirloom from my great-grandmother, cherished by my aunt. Near the end of the party, my aunt suddenly cried out, "Wait, where's the necklace?" The room turned chaotic as everyone began searching desperately, but it was nowhere to be found. That's when Nicole whispered nervously into my father's ear. "I saw her. I saw Hillary put it in her pocket." My world shattered in that instant. I screamed, denying it with every fiber of my being. "No, that's not true. I didn't take anything." But my words reached no one. My parents looked at me with the eyes of people staring at a thief. Nicole, tears brimming in her eyes, pointed her finger at me. To me, her expression looked like nothing but a performance. "Hillary, how could you do this?" my father thundered, his voice shaking the room. My mother covered her face and sobbed. Relatives stood back, whispering to one another as they stared. From that day forward, I carried the label of thief. I continued to plead my innocence over and over, but Nicole's testimony never wavered. I thought about going to the police, but there was no evidence to prove I wasn't the culprit. I knew all it would do was escalate the situation and brand me as a liar. And my family, more concerned with appearances, never reported it either. When I turned 18 and it was time to leave for college, my parents told me flatly, "Hillary, once you go off to school, don't bother coming back. Having a thief in the house is a disgrace." Those words pierced me like a blade, but at the same time, a quiet fire ignited inside me. Fine. If that's how they saw me, I would walk out on my own terms. Better to survive on my own than to cling to a home like this. So I didn't wait to be pushed out. I left by choice. With nothing but a small backpack, I stepped through the front door, silently vowing never to return. Nicole stood in the shadows by the door, watching me go. A smug smile, impossible to hide, played on her face. She continued to bask in our parents' favor while I started my life alone, working multiple part-time jobs, living in a cramped apartment, eating cereal for dinner. I could always feel those cold family eyes on my back, but I refused to give up. I swore I would clear my name one day. That chance came years later, in a way I never expected. By then, I had graduated from college and just started working. I finally managed to move out of my tiny student apartment into a new one. Though I had a stable income, I wanted to save for the future, so I spent my evenings browsing online secondhand marketplaces for used furniture. Scrolling past cheap sofas, something caught my eye. It was a necklace, one that looked strikingly similar to the heirloom my aunt had lost all those years ago. My heart pounded violently. My hands trembled as I gripped the mouse. It was unmistakably the necklace. The tiny scratch on the clasp, the slight dent on the pendant's corner. Details I had memorized since childhood. The very heirloom we had searched for desperately but never found. The one I had almost given up on. Suddenly, here it was. A jolt of electricity shot down my spine, every hair on my body standing on end. The seller was using an alias, but a deep certainty told me the truth. There couldn't possibly be two necklaces this identical in the world. This was it. I immediately contacted Casey, a close friend from college. Casey was a brilliant systems engineer at a major tech firm, and she knew all about my years of suffering. When I told her what I had found, she didn't hesitate to help. She traced the seller's IP address and transaction history, and soon enough, the truth emerged. There was a strong likelihood that Nicole was behind it. "Hillary, this is it. This is your chance to finally clear your name," Casey said. I nodded firmly. Although most sales on the marketplace were done through shipping, Casey noticed Nicole had enabled an option for in-person handoff. Because the item was expensive, buyers could reasonably request to see it in person before paying, and sellers often agreed. This wasn't just about recovering the necklace. It was about capturing Nicole's words on video, alongside the necklace itself, to secure undeniable proof. Casey reached out, pretending to be a wealthy buyer. She said, "It's valuable, so I'd like to see it in person and pay cash." Nicole, clearly in need of quick money, hesitated but ultimately agreed. We planned everything carefully, and 1 month later, it was time. Casey, dressed like an affluent client with a luxury handbag, arranged to meet Nicole at a cafe, the same one where I had worked part-time during college. I had spoken to the manager beforehand, and he readily agreed to help. He reserved a discreet table with room for hidden cameras, ensured other customers wouldn't be disturbed, and even allowed me to monitor from the back room. From behind the monitor, I watched the hidden feed, my breath caught in my throat. My heart thundered so hard I thought it might burst, my palms slick with sweat. The cafe door opened and Nicole walked in, hood pulled low, oversized sunglasses masking her face. Her attempt at secrecy only made her look suspicious in the bright, cheerful cafe. She glanced around nervously before spotting Casey, then shuffled over with a hunched posture. She handed Casey a small velvet box. Even through the monitor, I could see the gold necklace inside. It was identical to my aunt's lost heirloom. Casey asked, "Where did you get this?" Nicole froze, then lowered her voice, glancing around cautiously. "It was my aunt's keepsake. I just really need the money right now." The moment I heard those words, a jolt of electricity shot through my entire body. I clenched my hand against the wall so tightly my nails dug into it. These were the words I had waited years to hear. When Nicole left the cafe, I rushed to join Casey in the back room. Together, we replayed the footage. The video had everything: date, time, audio, and clear images of Nicole's face and voice admitting the necklace's origin. It was perfect proof. My eyes burned with tears, but I knew these were tears of victory. From that day forward, I kept the video saved on my phone like a talisman. I told myself, one day when the time came, I would use it. But today, when Nicole told me to just sleep on the floor with the dog and pay for stay, rent comes with the family discount, a special rate, $60 a night. While my parents laughed and dismissed me, I finally reached my breaking point. Years of anger, grief, and the unbearable stain of being called a thief. All of it boiled inside me, ready to explode. My fingers shook, my teeth dug into my lip. At last, the time had come to make the decision that would change my life. "It's time to tell the truth," I whispered. A few seconds later, I drew in a deep breath and sent Nicole the video. Her phone chimed. "Nicole, watch this," I said. To my own surprise, my voice was perfectly calm. My parents, curious, leaned in toward Nicole, watching the screen with her. "What the hell is this?" Nicole muttered, scowling as she pressed play. The video began, filled with the cafe's background chatter and Casey's voice. At first, Nicole only half listened. But slowly, unmistakably, the color drained from her face. Her eyes stayed glued to the screen, her mouth starting to tremble. My parents still didn't understand what they were seeing. They just stared in confusion. And then Nicole's own voice rang out clearly from the video. "This was my aunt's keepsake." In that instant, all color vanished from Nicole's face. My parents, still unsure of what they were seeing, looked back and forth between me and Nicole. What is this?" my mother asked, her voice thin and shaking. I kept my cold gaze fixed on Nicole as I spoke evenly. "This is the necklace you claimed I stole that Christmas. The one you framed me for. The real thief is standing right here, and this video proves it." My mother's eyes widened in shock. My father inhaled sharply. Nicole stood frozen, her face twisted with fear and despair. This can't be," my father whispered hoarsely. Slowly, my mother turned toward Nicole, raising a trembling finger to point at the woman in the video. "Nicole, this is you?" Her voice carried disbelief, laced with the anguish of betrayal. Nicole shook her head furiously. "No, it's fake. Hillary made this. It's a deep fake or something." I replied, calm and deliberate. "It's not fake. You sold that necklace to Casey at the cafe. This is the recording. And Casey, as well as the cafe manager, are witnesses." "That's a lie," Nicole shrieked hysterically. "Hillary's been plotting to ruin me all along. She's hated me for years." My father turned to me, confusion etched across his face. "Hillary, what is going on? Explain yourself." Explain myself? When I was accused, who listened to me? Who believed me? No one. You took Nicole's word and branded me a thief. And now, with this evidence right in front of you, you're still doubting me? My voice was cold, cutting. I placed Casey's detailed forensic report on the table. This video's authenticity has been verified by experts, and the cafe's security cameras also caught Nicole handing over the necklace. That footage has already been submitted to the police along with the necklace itself. Nicole's face went completely ashen. She looked away, lips quivering. Her trembling was pure fear and confusion. My parents, too, were shaken. Their faces had gone pale, eyes darting wildly as though the foundation of everything they had believed in was crumbling before them. Nicole, was it really you? My father asked, his voice unsteady. It was not anger but disbelief and deep sorrow that filled his tone. Nicole could not answer. She only bit her lip, staring down at the floor, her shoulders trembling violently, her strength draining from her body. Her silence screamed the truth louder than any denial could. Finally, my mother's knees buckled and she collapsed onto the sofa. Her eyes were vacant, unfocused. The weight of her blind faith in Nicole, her mistreatment of me, and the crushing guilt of the truth bore down on her. Her pale hand rose shakily, pointing at Nicole. You told us you saw Hillary steal it. My mother spoke to Nicole slowly, but with a steady weight in her voice. It was no longer the firm tone she once used to scold me, but one laced with deep hurt and the raw sting of betrayal. You swore you saw it with your own eyes. And because of that, we believed Hillary was a thief all these years. Her words broke off. The surge of emotion rising in her throat seemed to choke off any further words. Covering her face with both hands, she began to sob, not just with sorrow, but with the raw regret of realizing how deeply her blind trust had wronged me. Nicole lowered her head even further. Through the curtain of her hair, I could see the unstoppable stream of tears falling. The living room air grew so heavy that even breathing felt difficult. Silence pressed down on us all. In that silence, I felt every pair of eyes fixed on me. They were waiting, dreading what I would say next. As if I now held their fate in my hands. For years, I had been the one pushed down, silenced, cast out. And now I stood above them, ready to deliver the final truth. The truth that would shatter their false world once and for all. But my heart did not waver. There's one more thing you all need to hear. I locked eyes with my parents. This house is no longer yours. They stared at me, bewildered. What do you mean, Hillary? My father asked, his voice laced with unease. I placed my grandmother's will and the deed to the house on the table. Before she passed, my grandmother transferred this house into my name. I spoke calmly, without hesitation. She knew you forced me out, and she suspected that Nicole was the real thief all along. Memories of my grandmother filled my mind in vivid detail. When I was a child, ignored by everyone else while Nicole was endlessly pampered, she was the only one who cared for me. Even on the day I was branded a thief, she alone believed in my innocence. While my parents scolded me and relatives whispered, my grandmother held me tight and whispered, Hillary, don't worry. The truth will come out one day. Even after I was cast out, she kept in touch, never bad-mouthing my parents, but always letting me feel her quiet sorrow for my suffering. A few months before she died, she secretly called me and said, Hillary, this house is your birthright. It's where you belong. Those words became my strength. And quietly, she prepared everything, so I would be protected from their injustice and given a fair future. At those words, my parents' faces finally sank into complete despair. They stood in shock, confronted with the reality that the house they lived in was no longer theirs. Nicole froze in place, as if she had even forgotten how to breathe. Tears streamed endlessly from her eyes. This can't be, my father muttered, but the documents before him crushed any denial. These are all legally binding, I said coldly. The daughter they had abused and expelled now stood before them as the rightful owner of the home. No longer their powerless scapegoat, no longer the thief. I gave my final verdict. So you'll all have to leave this house. My voice was steady, unnervingly calm. My parents looked at me in disbelief. What are you saying, Hillary? This is our home. No, it's mine now, I answered with quiet authority. You told me to sleep on the floor with the dog and even demanded to pay for my stay. You forfeited any right to stay here. You have 24 hours to leave. Nicole collapsed where she stood, sobbing uncontrollably. "Hillary, please don't do this. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please don't make us leave." But her apology was far too late. Her words sounded hollow, like the screeching of a broken doll. Her eyes were twisted not with remorse, but with terror of losing what she thought she owned. I looked down at her with a cold gaze. Her tears stirred no feeling in me. "You can always pay me $60 a night each," I said quietly. My parents dropped their heads in despair. At last, they realized the family bond they thought they had built over decades had crumbled in a single instant. My proud father's shoulders shook, and my mother covered her mouth as sobs escaped her. Every time they seemed about to say sorry, their years of arrogance and dismissal of me seemed to choke the word back down. The position I had been oppressed into for so many years was now completely reversed, and I had sent that video to my aunt and other relatives as well. From my aunt, I received a voicemail filled with regret. "Hillary, I truly regret not believing you back then. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me, even if it's far too late." She repeated her apologies over and over. From my cousins came messages like, "Hillary, you've become so strong. Thank you for finally bringing the truth to light. Your courage to endure years of pain and still pursue the truth is truly admirable." Though I told myself I didn't need their approval, I couldn't deny the quiet warmth I felt receiving those words after so many years of avoidance. I let myself sink into the feeling of a quiet victory. It wasn't sweet, but rather a deep sense of relief, like a long, grueling battle had finally ended. For someone like me, who had always been pushed aside and made to feel alone since childhood, their words soothed old wounds, if only slightly, but the scars of the past could never fully disappear. Nicole was later arrested, but my aunt strongly expressed she did not want punishment, and with Nicole showing signs of deep remorse, the prosecution chose to suspend indictment. As for my parents, they were harshly condemned by the relatives for branding me a thief and casting me out. They lost the social standing they had clung to for years and were gradually cut off from nearly all family ties. A few weeks later, one cousin contacted me. She had seen Nicole in a park, living homeless, abandoned even by my parents, with no one left to help her. When I heard that, I felt nothing in particular. It was simply the consequence of her own actions. Thinking of the pain she once inflicted on me, I could only see it as the result she inevitably deserved. 6 months after the family reunion, I sold the house. It was my rightful inheritance from my grandmother, secured only after years of hardship. On the day the sale was finalized, I visited one last time. An empty living room, bare cupboards, it was all that remained. No more voices, no more chains binding me to that place. I inhaled deeply, and a rush of freedom filled my chest. The years spent there, the unjust pain I endured, all now felt like a distant memory. Afterward, I bought a home of my own. Not a rental, but truly mine, in my name alone. A sofa I chose myself, windows streaming with sunlight, a small garden where I planted herbs. Each detail was a symbol of my new life. Here, I have begun to build a future no one can take away from me.